I'm going to show you how to replace the transformer on a radiant heat boiler. This is part of a multi-video series. The boiler transformer takes power from the breaker, converts it into the various voltages that the boiler needs. Whenever working on anything, we always turn the power off and the gas off. So I got the gas valve off, the switch off, and the breaker off. This thing is not going to be powered up when we're touching the transformer. Do not touch anything, and make sure you take a bunch of pictures before you undoing any connections. So what I did first, before I even bought a new transformer, is I took all the connections off and cleaned the corrosion off, as they were pretty corroded. This transformer must have been on its last leg, because as soon as I hooked everything back up and turned it back on, this thing melted out. I heard bang, pop, and then you could see the oil burned out of the transformer. This thing is totally fried. Whether or not this was the real problem, gotta replace it now. I cannot stress enough to make sure the gas and power is off at the unit, including the breaker, and to take many different pictures from many different angles in case you forget how it goes back together. So you're gonna see this a lot. Double check the breaker is off and the gas is off. So I take a lot of different pictures. While I'm making these videos, sometimes I get a little confused. It happens to the best of us. The best thing is to look back at those photos and see where those connections actually hooked up. So with the power off, gas off, I took the back of the panel off first. I know I was showing you those connections taken off, but we want to undo the main power to the transformer first. I just did that so I wouldn't break those little two-way connections. So it's just a couple screws that hold the plate onto the power from the breaker. And you see me connecting them right now just so I don't forget where they are. Now we can expose the wires that run direct to the breaker. There's only a few connections behind the transformer. This one yellow wire, a couple of black wires that connect to a black wire, and a couple of white wires that connect to the white wire. Just make sure you're not mixing this up. The new transformer, the wires are exactly the same. And all you gotta do is start swapping it over. So this is me just undoing the wires. I'm going to reuse the wire nuts. I simply try to take a mental note of everything that's going on. You can see that there's 3 black wires that all connect to each other, along with the white wires. So we simply remove the wire nuts, undo the transformer, and then we can start to install the new transformer and worry about the wires in front after this part's done. So I'm just showing you the footage of what I did. You can see these connections. The wires look pretty good. Nothing's too corroded, nothing's burnt out. This sticker was on there keeping these wires together. I removed it. I'm going to attach it later. So I'm simply untangling the wires. Right now, the black, yellow, and white wires have been disconnected. Therefore, the transformer is no longer connected to the supply power running to the breaker. So I just removed those 2, and I took some more pictures just in case I forget later. I take a lot of pictures when I'm working on something new that I'm not too familiar with. And now I'm starting to undo the rest of the wires. I use the wire nuts and I kind of put them back on to kind of as a marker to remember along with the pictures. But I just write down which wires went to which wire. I remember which terminal went to which terminal. Again, the pictures are a big help for that. So I finally got the old transformer removed. You can see the oil burnt out of it. This thing was fried. It has overcurrent protection. I thought maybe that was shutting it off for the main problem of this, but come to find out, this thing must have just been on its last leg, and I'm glad I could fix it while I was around fixing stuff, and it didn't just go out while we were out of town or something. So I'm putting this back together the same way I took it apart. First, I'm going to connect the supply lines behind the transformer. I'm just doing this by realigning the wires, making sure that they go into the wire nut accurately. Again, there's 3 white wires that need to connect, 3 black wires that need to connect, and a couple of yellow wires. So I'm just reusing the wire nuts, making sure everything's secure by pulling on the wires gently, just to make sure that the wire nut is secure. Now, since I've started connecting wires, it's a little bit more harder to hold the transformer securely and attach the rest of the wires. These wires don't have a lot of slack in them. So I'm just hooking up the rest of them, reusing the wire nuts, making sure everything is secure by tugging on the wires slightly, like I said before, making sure that wire nut is on just perfect, that there's no exposed wires, and it won't come apart as I'm trying to fit this thing back in the electrical box. Again, there's only 2 yellow wires. If you're ever interested, you should be able to look up a wiring diagram. It's probably with your owner's manual, but you should be able to go on the manufacturer website and find it. So right now, the supply lines have been all connected. Now I'm going to put it back in place. I'm going to pack the wires in very safely, very carefully, making sure nothing is touching anything or it could could shake loose or anything like that. And it's just 2 Phillips head screws that connect the electrical box that hold the transformer on. So we're just going to make sure those are nice and secure. After we do that, we can now focus on all the connections up front. The first thing I did was swap over these terminal covers from the old one to the new one and connect this gray wire over here. Again, I got all this info from the pictures, and then I connected these top 2, making sure they're secure. Now, I made sure that those were not touching, as they could if you installed pretty carelessly. Now I need to connect the wires that go to the zone valve controls. That's what we were just looking at there. You can look at the old one too if by chance you got lost and just see which ones had connections on them. Also, these wires connect directly to the Phillips head screw. So there's quite a few connections on here. It's hard for me to describe through video, but I just took a bunch of pictures, followed the pictures, made sure all the wire nuts were secure, and that everything was exactly how it was when I took it apart. All these components are exactly the same. You just need to make sure that everything is secure and that nothing could come loose, possibly shorting out these brand new components you're putting in. So I'm just pointing to a couple of the screws that had direct wires screwed into them. But again, make sure everything is out of the way, nothing is overlapping, touching in any sort of weird way, and that you're all good. After you do that, we can now turn on the gas, turn on the switch, turn on the power. If you can, go directly there, make sure nothing's going crazy, no bang pops. In this case, everything was hooked up great, the new transformer's working awesome, and the boiler turned on. But the boiler only ran for 10 to 20 minutes still. So the original problem is still at hand. Even though I had to replace that transformer, it seemed like it was on its last leg, we still got to find the real problem. If you found this content helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for the next part of the series.